With everyone going online, social media marketing has become an indispensable tool for all businesses. It is one of the most dynamic, versatile, and effective ways to engage with a brand's target audience and grow its market reach. In this Fame Plus Market Days session, Sitem Executive Director Pauline Suaco Juan chats with Georgina Wilson, co-founder and brand director of Sunny's Studios, a homegrown lifestyle brand that has amassed a global audience through the power of social media. Founded in 2013 as a one-stop shop for sunglasses, Sunny Studios grew into a full-service shop selling both sunglasses and prescription eyewear. In 2016, the brand ventured into the food industry with Sunny's Cafe. And in 2018, they launched a cosmetics line, Sunny's Face. Today, the brand has branches in the Philippines, Vietnam, and Guam, and operates an online store that offers worldwide shipping. Sunny Studios grew their brand with savvy marketing, with social media playing a huge role in expanding their size and reach. In this talk, Georgina Wilson shares the brand's best practices so you, too, can maximize the full potential of your social media marketing strategies. This is Speaking with Screens, Marketing to the Social Media Generation.
Hello, I am Pauline Swakawan. Welcome to Speaking with Screens, Marketing to the Social Media Generation. In this session, we will talk about digital marketing, specifically social media marketing. This is obviously not breaking news as it's been an increasingly dominant force in the last decade. We all share or even lurk on our personal accounts, cultivating our own social media network. But as the pandemic has clearly shown, there has been no better way for your market to find you and connect with you than online. And I hope that after today's video presentation, you will be able to expand your brand's online reach or maybe even take that first step into the digital now. Because the digital is no longer the future, it is now. I would also like to add that after our interview with Georgina, we will be running an interactive game where you can win some Sunny's goodies. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Joining me is Georgina Wilson, co-founder and brand director of Sunny Studios, a homegrown lifestyle company behind the brands Sunny Specs, Sunny's Face, and Sunny's Cafe. Sunny Studios is a prime example of a Filipino brand that has captivated the social media generation, not only from the Philippines, but almost the whole of Southeast Asia, thanks to its online shop and an effective, efficient, and thriving social media strategy. And today, Georgina will be sharing with us their best practices for marketing to the social media generation. Everybody, please welcome Georgina Wilson. Hi, George. It
Hi,
is
Sophie.
so good to see you. I mean, I haven't seen you in ages, aside from on Instagram, of course. How are you?
I am very well. Well, I just gave birth. I had a daughter and my third child, and I'm hoping last. It's not easy. I think post 2020, with the world has just changed so much, and that's very applicable to our business at the moment. We've changed, the way we work, what we sell, and everything about what Sunny's is on a day-to-day basis. So my day is pretty much in front of the screen talking on Zoom meetings all day. It's been a really nice welcome break to spend the morning with you and kind of reflect on where we're at and what we've done so far. So yeah, and I love the name Speaking with Screens. It really encapsulates everything that I'm feeling at the moment. Here we are, speaking
Yeah,
with screens.
I'm so excited to finally talk to you. And this time, not on a social level, right? George has always been beauty and brains, even before as a model and as a social media superstar. I always thought that you had the best insights with regards to growing your brand as Georgina Wilson. And then obviously that kind of parlayed into Sunny Studio. But before we get into that, let us begin this interview with a quick history lesson because Sunny's oh my God, has it been this long? Is
I
almost 10 years old, right?
cannot believe it. So yeah, we're technically 8 years this year, but I'm sure any entrepreneur will be able to relate to the fact that once the world sees it, you've probably known that baby for so long. It's longer than a human incubation period. And like, so we built Sunny's, probably we launched 2013, and we started with Sunny's, the idea and the inception, like the conception of it, early 2012. So it is coming up to a decade, which honestly, while I was, reflecting before this call, I was shocked to hear that, because the decade has just flown by. It's crazy. But yeah, it's a brand that's been around for a decade, and that is, to me, a huge accomplishment, and so many people have contributed to that along the way. And I'm happy that you mentioned, me building my personal brand, because I always saw that stage of my career in a very, I approached it like a business. And I think Sunny's came along very, like, I was so happy for it not to all be centered around me. So I was also thinking about how there were talks of I should name Sunny's as under my name. And I just knew that I didn't want that pressure. It is a lot of pressure that everything relies on your name. So yeah, thankfully we spun it, and just it's now completely its own being and has its own identity, which yeah.
Let's just go into how did you get involved with Sunny Studio as the brand director? Of course, we all know that it's a business that you run together with your friends, Bea Soriano, D, and Eric B, and your cousin, Martine, and sister, Jessica.
Yeah.
So, how and why, and how do you work with them, basically?
It happened in phases, and so the first phase was I loved what Bea was doing, and I so wanted to support her. And at that time, I was putting together the early makings of what it was Sunny's Face, and so that was, let's say, 2011. I was so sure that I wanted a beauty brand. And Bea was already doing this really cool thing. She had a retail store that was Charlie. I loved the Sunny specifically in her store. So that's how we started with just the eyewear business. And we got together, and it was just this like magic that happened, that we just said, we want to do something completely different. We want to, we don't feel like there is something that is connecting with us here. We never thought of it just local too. We always thought we wanted to be a brand that was globally understood and resonated with you, no matter where you were located. It was just something that, was just universal in terms of the themes, which was fun, it was accessible, it was something you wanted to be part of, it made you feel good. And I think more than everything else, you could trust the product. It was great product, and it wasn't too expensive. So we didn't ever say the word we wanted to disrupt, we wanted to change or whatever. At the end of the day, we are our own toughest critics, and we wanted to make something that we felt spoke to us. And that was it. Like, just to think about it, it wasn't studied at all. It was just like this whole experience that we wanted to create. No matter who you were, no matter where you lived, we wanted to be able to share this experience with people.
Sunny's has been really successful in its social media strategies, from crafting engaging content to creating and sustaining an active Sunny's community. So, George, what are some of these digital accomplishments that you are most proud of?
When I was reflecting on this question, it's easy to go with obvious accomplishments. I thought it would be really fun to go back to the very beginning of Sunny's. And that's what I find is such a huge accomplishment, because I feel like we set the way for brands to, like, how to engage with your customers and your consumers and your future customers. And we did it in a way that wasn't so serious. We just thought, we want real connections with these people that are interested in us, and we want to find a way to have these engagements with them. We want to talk to them, we want to get to know them, and most importantly, we also want them to know who we are. So I thought it was so fun how back in the beginning when we launched with like this small store in Mall of Asia. I'm sure I invited you, and it was just insane. It was like pandemonium. We had people running from all corners of Mall of Asia. The SM team said they've never seen an opening so big and so much panic, and that was all purely because of social media. We told everybody online, this is where to find us, this is where to come, this is what to expect. And then we replicated it. Every store we opened, we said the first people, and it was usually followers of the brand, first 100 people would get free eyewear. You know, we do fun things like that. We even had like fun Easter egg hunts around Manila. We'd have like pop ups. Back in the day, this is like, let's say 10 years ago, nobody was having this much fun with people they interacted with online. So we did this really fun thing of doing online and offline and making that all feel like one whole big Sunny's world, if you were, to liken that. And I thought that that was such a cool memory. And it's those types of accomplishments that I'm proud of. It just felt like social media was fun and organic and real. And, I still always want our social media to be that way, that it just feels like a friend that you'd like to chat with.
Let me throw this curveball question at you because obviously you guys had a substantial following before you even started with Sunny's. I mean, if I remember correctly, you were already 1 point something million, going on two when you started with Sunny's, and Martine had a considerable following as well. So did Bea. I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to us or watching us today are going to say, but I'm not Georgina Wilson. I don't have a million followers. So it's easy for you to parlay this because you have already the fans at your disposal, so to speak. How can you unpack that?
No, yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And that has been on my mind. And I'd like to start with the importance of a brand. I feel like that's where a lot of these questions come. And the importance of social media is part of that story. Like, what is that message that you want to tell people about your brand? And the importance of a brand to me is about what somebody can expect from you, the consistency, and it's also trust. And to me, that trust is something that is so important for me to deliver to the people that love Sunnies. The reason I bring that up is because I have always felt like the best way to be able to explain who you are as a brand is via social media. And actually, I wouldn't be disheartened, discouraged, or deterred from setting up and investing time in that social media, even if you don't have a million followers, because actually, these days, it's about engaged and targeted communities. My millions of followers don't matter if they're not interested and they're not the target market of who we are speaking to at Sunny's. And they may like it, but they might not, it's not, I don't look at my followers as sure na yan, jackpot. I think, how do I engage with the people that value Sunny's? And that doesn't matter. It could be 10 people, it could be 100 people. But if I'm genuinely communicating with them, if I'm hearing them and I'm giving them a reason to trust Sunny's, then that's successful engagement to me.
What you've been saying is sort of like things that I think people who are interested in developing their social media strategy need to hear. I feel like a lot of people do have business accounts and they post, but there is no rhyme or rhythm or strategy other than an organic posting that would really help boost their numbers and help boost not just their numbers on social media, but I guess their sales and engagement numbers so that you can become bigger as brands.
Completely agree. And I think a key word to take away from what you said is strategy. I think now, because we're such a big company, things are a lot more considered and thought out and planned. And we can get into that later on. But I think at the end of the day, no matter what size business you are, even if there are zero sales, you're just starting, strategy is everything. You need to plan. You can never over plan. Like, you can overthink, but once you know what you're doing, putting time and research and strengthening your message is never wasted. That is never time wasted. When you realize that social media is a way for you to leave impressions on the people that you value and that you want to make connections with. That's all it is.
Surely in the beginning, you guys had to do it yourselves. And you've always maintained that you're very hands on. So I ask this because, there are brands who have not really done anything to jumpstart their social media marketing. So maybe they can get inspired by sort of like a walkthrough of how you did it in the beginning.
One of the ways that we started our social media was Sunny's is a very visual and vocal brand. Like it's the balance of those two things. It's the message and it's how we say it. And so we started with tons of mood boards. We had Pinterest boards after Pinterest boards of what we wanted to look like, so that when we finally started those messages, it was very easy to kind of explain to our teams. It was us at the beginning. It was like Martine making those posts, me saying, this is what we should be talking about. This is the direction we should be going. And then, it's that magic of like making that together. It's this very funny balance of casual, but yet very considered. Casual but considered. Like, I like that balance and describing it. I've never described it, but I think that's what it is. So I think that's a very good starting point, is get your vision straight. And that's write down who you want to be known as a brand, what you stand for, who are you talking to? Because I think sometimes people think everybody, the most successful businesses aren't necessarily, trying to cater to every type of demographic. It's a very, you can target, especially if you're trying to have a niche. Like, it's great to go like zero in on a certain customer base. So we wanted to make sure that we surrounded our social media with things that we liked ourselves. So it was a very easy kind of litmus test, if you want, do I like it? Yes or no. So would I care to see this? Yes or no. Helpful for us that we were kind of the demographic that we wanted to speak to. And if you're not necessarily demographic, I'd have those conversations with the people that you do want to speak to. Does this resonate with you? Feel free to check this and have real conversations with people. Is this relevant to you? Because one of my rules for copywriting is you have to be able to say it out loud. Like, as a brand or as a person, don't write things that you don't feel you would actually say. The brand is a real person, and in that way, say things that make sense and that you're comfortable saying.
I mean,
So
in the voice, in the exact wording that feels natural to you, other than because you could say it and use highfalutin words, right?
Yeah, exactly. Don't. Communication is best when it's clear and it's direct and it's understood. Somebody told me once that communication is not about what you say, it's what was understood by the other side. And I think that holds so true for social media. You are there to communicate, connect, make it count. So, especially in those first posts of yours and those interactions with the customer, go back to what you want to stand for. I emphasize this because I actually think it's so important. When you are building a business and a brand, you want to know what can the person come back to you for, because you know how it is, like when you're chatting with your friends, you're like, oh, I need this, let's say rattan furniture. There will be someone top of mind that comes. You want to be that top of mind. So you need to work on that before that conversation happens. You need to implant those things into this person's head. Oh, I saw that. And that's what they stand for. Once you have that like unique selling point, and then you communicate that effectively, I think that's what makes a business magical, that you are top of mind. Like, I really hope that we're doing a job well, that if someone says, hey, what's a brand that we could check out? Somebody international comes, what's a brand that we can check out that represents Filipino consumers from age 18 to 35? Or what's a brand that makes cute stuff? Or what's a brand that I can get my eyes checked at? I hope that we're, considered in those conversations. That means that we're doing our job right and we're communicating properly. So yeah, so back to the question. Mood board, clarity on your message. What do you want to be known for? And make sure that what you say is worth reading. Those are 3 rules for me.
And then, how do you know it's working? What infrastructure?
Did you? I choose not to quantify these interactions right away. I know how I interact with other brands is it's a long process for me. I think about it. I want to understand. I look at the products. Do I identify with this brand? It's a whole consideration for me. But once I do start buying, I never stop. It's a lifelong relationship with me. So for Sunny's, I don't ever want to quantify that because, that engagement already is so valuable to me. It may not have dollar signs or peso signs attached to it, but it means that we're using our tool effectively. People know who we are. And you never know. That person may recommend it to a friend. They may buy without that conversion number that you know of. How do I say this? I know that it doesn't sound like the most sound advice, but I'm not after trying to quantify it daily. I just want to make sure, if a business is healthy or not. You know that, it's translating into sales. Sometimes there's like instantaneous things when it's 50 off. Okay, yeah, that's going to translate. But to me, the brand building exercise and that constant interaction daily with them, that's what's important to me, not necessarily the analytics and the numbers behind it. Having said that, I'd like to say that we have a team within Sunny's that does look at this all day and they report to me. And, like I have that benefit and that luxury. We obviously didn't have that in the beginning. I feel like you can get carried away with trying to quantify everything. What's more valuable to me is seeing it, hearing about it changing someone's life. But I'm just emotional like that. So yeah.
I'm glad you pointed out brand building. And it looks like from what you just said, that is really your priority over, I guess, the likes and the comments and
Oh yeah.
the engagement
Yeah.
that happens
Yeah.
on the different pages. Let me just quickly ask if it's the same for the different social media platforms. And how do you decide which particular platform is better for, like, let's say, specs or the cafe or maybe
Yeah.
um,
Um,
space?
you know, Choosing which social media platform is a huge part of your strategy. So each platform has very different benefits and also depends like geographically where you are, who you're trying to target, and yeah, what demographic you're trying to target. Like for example, when we launched progressive lenses, so we provide lenses that are specifically made for users that are usually, late 40s, early 50s, or onwards and above. And for me, it's just like getting into the shoes of your consumer and who you want to talk to. And then you can kind of really figure out where do they live. So we made sure that most of our ads, specifically for this product, we wanted to make sure that we went in on like Facebook. So we were running Facebook ads and also mall ads, newspaper ads. It was like, we knew that those people were probably on those platforms over, for example, Instagram and TikTok. So it's really how do you effectively utilize each? And then I know that this sounds overwhelming, but it's just having fun with each platform. And trial and error is also, we can't say that we haven't made mistakes. We've definitely, and it's just kind of saying, okay, that didn't really work. Let's go back to the drawing board and not get discouraged and kind of think again. How do we communicate? Go back to what our values are and what we want people to know of us.
You mentioned earlier that now you have a team that's working with you doing the analytics. How do you make sure that everyone's on the same page, that everyone understands the brand, and that your directives and the strategies and the goals are all aligned?
When you're a small company, you have the luxury of being so dynamic because you're like three people, you're like five people. So it's so easy to get everyone on the same page. I think that that's also something that I really want to convey, that you may look at Sunny's as a huge brand. And I think that that's like, as you grow, it becomes more and more challenging to, get everybody on the same page. And so that's what Martina and I spend most of our day on, is really giving people, working closely with our team, not necessarily to write the caption, but for example, to explain to them why something works and why something doesn't. Because my vision for Sunny's is it's something that outgrows me. It's something that's what I've wanted since day one. I wanted to live beyond me. my children. And I think that it has a reason to do so. We have now in my team, I have about 54 people just working on brand marketing and creatives, getting everybody aligned and on the same page and working towards the same goal, I would say is my number one job at the moment. And it's great, especially when you work with such intelligent, creative people, it's also your job to give them the room to breathe. So, yeah, constantly a balance.
Yeah, and there's nothing like when you're hands on, right?
Yeah,
So the whole experience of like shepherding the whole thing, thinking, literally thinking and I know laying out, doing the posts.
after
That's
brainstorming, and yeah, yeah.
George. I wanted to ask at this point, what would you advise in terms of budget for companies who obviously are going to embark on a social media campaign? How does it work for Sunnies?
When we started Sunny's, obviously we had, as every business does, like working startup capital. I remember people telling me that we were crazy because we spent more than a third, I would say, close to half of our initial budget, the only money that we had on our shoot, what we spend on shoots now, 10 years later, from day one, because we knew that that investment in our brand was priceless. It was just like, and it was like, now that I look back, we were right to do that. Like, we were so right because that initial impression has lasted. That set the tone of what Sunny's is and it will continue to be. I guess you put your money, where your mouth is. Like, you make sure that if you want to be known as an aesthetic, creative, visual brand, then put your money there. And there are other things. That's not just the only thing that you can spend on and prioritize. But to us, that was our most important thing. Reasoning was we wanted to make sure that we were represented visually properly. And that was so important to us because I know that's important to me as a consumer. So when you talk about budgeting, and no matter who you are, no matter how you start the business, I always believe in doing it properly. You start with a very clear budget and you don't kind of get out of your own pocket or whatever. It's have the business run on its own. Put money aside for the marketing spend because that's a very crucial spend on for your business. We spend anywhere like usually a good rule for me is like 5 to 10% of your sales you should be spending on investing back in the business. That's how I see it. It's not really like burning money, but it's how do we represent our brand best? How do we shoot our products well? And this is not like the in-house teams, but this is more, I guess, outsourced costs that cost to produce these great images or the cost to fund these images so that more people see it. That's how I kind of look at that 5 to 10%. It's a huge balance, and I hope everyone values that, let's say 5 to 10%, because that is what will keep your brand around forever. And you can make the most amazing product, but if no one knows about it, what's going to happen?
That's a good note to end this segment on. But I love what you said about you just have to have clarity of vision and then just keep talking about what's important to you as a brand to your creatives. So now we're going to go into content creation and you've already led us there. So, or what it is that you're going to say into these social media platforms.
The tone of your brand is the only way that people will hear you. Make sure that you're doing that right. It's hugely important.
All right. The digital space is such a noisy space. So
It
the
is
challenge is to make sure that your message is heard,
clear.
right? But before we get into that, so how do you set up the content? Do you have like an editorial calendar, a lineup, and then who do you need on your team to implement?
I guess like a normal kind of life cycle, content life cycle. I'll describe what a launch life cycle looks like. But let's say when you talk about a launch, so we start with obviously the product's there already. We start with what do we want people to know about this? And that dictates the shoot. Like, what vibe do we want this product to have? Because I like giving each product its own, almost like its own brand and its own identity. So I do think of like how to break down Sunny's into a smaller brand for these like product launches. That's a major part of the content. And then we have like a grid So we have weekly meetings, especially building up to a shoot. So we look at it and we take them on a journey. And so that journey is really important to map out, because I find that brands are most effective when they fully have my attention and I want to go on the journey with them. And it's all about storytelling. It's all about how do we tell our story best. Just to technically go over, we have Instas, like we have these like Instagram accounts that are internal. So we test everything before it goes up. We have chats on it. This morning while I was getting ready, I said, I love the idea, but the lip looks really chapped, so it's not selling me. Like it's just like I know it sounds trivial, but there's nothing to me that's trivial for a brand. There's nothing too small.
Yeah, but I love it because I think that's what makes it so compelling, is because you're telling your stories, no matter how small. And even if it's just something, as you say, trivial as using lip liner, you really go to town and make it a huge story. And suddenly it's bigger. It's not so little anymore. It's not just a lip
Yeah,
liner, right?
yeah,
It takes on a
yeah.
life of its own. And that's really how it,
A brand comes to life.
yeah, and
Yeah.
how you can build on the brand, right?
Yeah. So I think that's a really good message too to anyone making their social media. Like for any entrepreneur, never question your gut feel. If you think it's right, like, and go with what you intuitively think is right, you may find and you will find that with those, there will be people that also appreciate that. Like, keep it real. Like, that's
Yeah.
all I can say. Keep it real.
I was going to ask you what your take is on viral content, because a lot of brands, I mean, particularly when they work with marketing agencies or ask for viral content. Does that ever figure into your pre-production meetings? Do you ever ask for, I want viral content?
I have never, and I will never say that I want viral content. I am so against it because in its nature, it's disingenuous. Like, you're asking to go viral purely for the reason of going viral. Like, I would go as far as to say as I hate it. Like, I find that that's what's wrong with internet marketing, is when you're trying to do things purely for the purpose of attention, and trying to get your brand. I would say that it's actually really dangerous for brands to go around looking for the next viral thing, because you are reliant on these trends or on these things that, when it's taken away, what's your foundation? Who are you? And if that's what you're searching for, I think it's a really good time to ask, like, why are you looking for this viral content? Is it because you want more followers or to be known? I would say it's really the wrong way to be known. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm from a different school of beliefs, but I think viral content is you're playing with fire, and I think it's disingenuous. Like, you make things to make beautiful things. You make things to communicate with that audience properly. If it's may ma-viral lang, I don't find that genuine.
George, grabe, I'm so proud of you. I mean, I know you were madaldal, but oh my God, you're like a marketing guru.
I love the conversation. I love having the conversation. And sorry, just to like bring it all back to my message. I think why Sunny's is what it is today is because of our conversations that happen online. So this is why social media is important, because you build a relationship with your customer. And to me, there is nothing more exciting than a customer telling me how much they love the product. And I get DMs all day. If someone wants to talk to me about product, they can literally have my whole day. Like, that's all I want to talk about. But without social media, I never know these things. I don't ever see that feedback as like a negative thing. I think it's like feedback's a gift, right? And having that dialogue and conversation with the people that take their time to go to Sunny's, spend their hard-earned money to go to Sunny's, that's so valuable to me. And that, when you talk about quantifying social media, that's what I want to quantify. So that's what I want people to understand social media is. It's not a tool to go viral. It's not a tool to, constantly check your dollar signs, but it's a tool to engage with the people that matter the most.
Sunny's has built an international audience. Is there a difference when you're growing the local market versus an international market? Do you talk to them
Um,
differently? I mean, you talk to the whole world in theory on social media, right?
I think it's a really important, pertinent thing for brands to think about now is you can't change your tone depending on who you're talking to. A brand is a brand because they are consistent, reliable, and people know what to expect. That's the whole foundation of a brand. You need a voice that's the same for both. So to answer your question, no, there is no difference in our tone internationally. And I think good product is universal. We can make specific lines that make sense to our, current consumer. But I would never think that that current consumer has to be spoken to in a way that's different from our future international consumer. So I've always thought of the brand to be something that can live here. It can live internationally. It's a global citizen, Sunnies.
What about when you speak to on a B2B level? Because obviously, whenever you post, it's really towards a general audience or consumers who would may or may not come to the store or on to buy, right? But B2B, where you're trying to sell the brand so that you get represented in other markets abroad, is there a strategy?
What's really interesting with B2B is B2B branding is hugely valuable. And I like follow some of my suppliers on Instagram and they're like, they launch a new bottle. And I'm like, hey, that's great. I'm sold. So you don't think that because typically B2B have never been invested so much in branding, it doesn't mean you shouldn't. So there are a lot of businesses that their target market is international, right? To me, it's not a consideration of local, international, but it's who are you talking to? Some countries have been able to brand themselves, which is what I would love for the Philippines to do, is brand ourselves to be top of mind for something that we now have a very competitive space to be considered.
Okay. So the challenge when it comes to using social media is the fact that everyone is now online and potentially a customer of your brand, right? So this is perhaps the reason why multi-generational marketing has become a trend as well. So in the course of your business, have you identified like secondary, maybe tertiary markets?
So one thing I never thought about when we started Sunny's is I'm the consumer, so I know best. I'm going to make what I like because I'm making it for me. And what we're facing now is, and I think it's a very interesting time to be a brand and to evolve into a brand that we'd like to stay around for a long time, if not forever, is you need to adapt to the times, but still stay true to yourself. So I look at big brands like Apple, Nike, Chanel. They've been around for so long. And I was reflecting on this very recently. There are also brands that I think have been burned at stake by, a good example is like Victoria's Secret, because they just weren't able to evolve with the times. So, I asked myself, how does Sunny's now evolve? And I think what's great about the Gen Z generation, I have a huge amount of respect for them, is they are pushing brands to be better. They are holding brands accountable. They are making sure that I know millennials never questioned, what brands did. They're like, it looks great, it sounds great, I like it, let's go. Never say, oh, we're Sunnies, we don't do that. You can't, you have to listen to people's opinions and you have to learn, and especially when it comes to different generations, even the way that they market on TikTok is so interesting and so different. Sunny's is a Instagram first brand, and so that's been a huge challenge for us to translate that into how the generation wants to absorb information now. Every part of the business will come with challenges and opportunities, and you kind of just have to roll with it. And that's also kind of getting to know new audiences.
George, what steps should a brand take to be more inclusive in their marketing? Is it the medium or the message? Or maybe the platform, diba?
I think what's hugely valuable and probably the most important thing for a brand is consistency. So I would not change my message. I would keep saying the same thing. And actually, with social media, with the amount of noise that's on social media, you can't be afraid and you can't overdo it almost. It's like when you pick up your phone to your friend, you don't expect them to sound any different, right? Same thing with a brand. No matter where you see that friend in a party or at home, you expect them to kind of deliver the message in the same way, but it's a different place and medium. I think Sunny's is quite similar to that, where we keep our messaging consistent. But if we'd like to talk to different generations, then that's how we use our platforms better. There's even, like targeted marketing where we know that a specific store, for example, SM Pampanga, has an overstock of, a blue colored frame. Then we might run blue colored ads around that area. And again, it's just to have fun with it. You could do like fun, like, I don't know, Sunny's is blue today, and like have like lots of different visuals that make you feel, hey, I kind of want a pair of blue sunglasses. Like, it's something like that. That's a trivial, like a funny example. But you could do it, like, for example, when we're talking to progressive users, which are usually like 50 and above, we may be speaking more on Facebook. We created like an online community via chat groups because I think that's hugely impactful in the Philippines. So, making sure that people can connect with our stores via chat groups too, using those mediums strategically. And that goes back to, what we talked about in the beginning is making sure that you're clear, that you have a strategy, and that you think about the best way for them to hear it. You need to be that involved, because if you say you care about customers and you say you care about how they experience your brand, I mean, you have to test drive it.
It's interesting how you've highlighted how engagement or the comments of your social media followers actually led to some product development or actually leads to, for example, as you were saying in the case of SM Pampanga, you running ads just to like help the sales of blue spectacles there. So, what else does a brand get from engagement aside from, well, I guess all these insight to how better to run your company?
I would say one of the best things that we get from engagement is loyalty, customer loyalty. Like, to me, that's one of the most valuable things is that you get. I'm sure everyone can relate as a customer. If you are not heard and you're not listened to, especially when something's going wrong, you're just like livid, like nothing's ever going to fix that. And so having open communication channels with them via social media, I think, has helped people feel connected to us and loyal. So we've had people that have been coming to our stores for close to a decade now. And that trust, for example, that trust in their eyesight and their vision is so important to us. And it's hard to quantify in direct sales. Like, we run this ad now, sales are this. I see it as a long term investment into that customer relationship. And it's constantly, making sure that we're listening to them.
So, but what you're saying basically is that the social media channels are also customer service or customer relationship platforms for you.
I mean, you could actually look at social media as purely customer relationship. That's what it is. I mean, from everything I've been saying has been leading to, it's all about building the relationship. It's before the sale, it's after the sale, it's during the sale. They show me photos of the sale. It's maybe the consideration, it's everything. And that whole journey that's what people have to see social media as. It's your medium of communication. That's it.
So every business in one way or another is doing social media, but not everyone is able to maximize its potential. So for our last segment, we are now going to discuss how you can evaluate your social media strategy. So social media analytics and insights should be at the forefront of your marketing strategy, and especially if you want to make sure that all your efforts are not wasted. What are the social media analytics and insights that you use and how important are they?
Pauline, I have to admit that we have a team that studies this and looks at it and comes up with these strategies. So they, make sense of all the data and then report to me kind of this is what is working, this is what is not working. And we work with digital agencies too. Having said that, I'm not the type to quantify because I know that it's a long term journey. But it's never bad to review. I don't ever want to have posts to have likes. That's not what it's about. But you're never, I think it's always a good practice to kind of say, okay, people did like this. There was a lot of engagement on this. Like, for example, we featured one of our friends, her name's Suyen. Her posts like just go crazy because I think people relate to her. They find that they're like, I can see what it might look like on me when we post her. I would say review it as a big picture. Like, what did we want to achieve? Did we achieve it? As compared to this post didn't work, this post, because sometimes it could be like at the wrong time of the day. We realize that people like engaging with our posts after like work. They like kind of escaping because people are busy till 6 p.m. We started doing our launches at like midnight because we're like, wow, that's when people are really ready and like we have their attention. I don't want people to get too caught up in it because I feel like that is a danger of reviewing your strategy over and over again. I want people to look at the big picture of having an intuitive like sense of what people want and like what people do like. Even if you like it, sometimes it doesn't like fly or connect, and review and kind of think, how do we tell our story better? How do we do this better? Like, people, for example, they weren't connecting with our big, highly produced ads. And they wanted to see natural light. They wanted to see somebody swipe the color because the color looked better in that way. So it's more having that insight will have you represent your brand better.
Data. When is it important to listen to the data?
I think it's important to listen to the data when it's taken over a certain period of time. I'm a mathematician by training. So I would say that you can't look at things in a small picture because you're never going to get the right picture, right? So, same thing with social media. Don't look at your last 5 posts, but kind of maybe take a step back, look at your, let's say, what has worked. We do it like by a quarterly and monthly review. These are the ads that did work, these are the ones that didn't, and have fun with it. Okay, that didn't really work. Let's try it again. And I always take our team back to what are we trying to achieve? Because you can get really caught up with, let's run an ad because we need to run an ad. I always say, wait, let's go back to the drawing board. What do you want me to hear from this? When you put that challenge on people and people have to say beyond all the message, it's simple and short. Like you're never gonna get it like all in one try. It's a lot of trial and error.
And so you have the data on the different trials, like this
Yeah.
is A, and then you can compare which one eventually is the better tone or the better visual, right? Yeah.
When people start talking about like ROI of an ad, like that's for another team to handle. I just like I don't like getting bogged down by it because I feel like it's heavy sometimes where I'm like, whatever. So what if they didn't convert right now? I'm in it for the long run.
But Sunny's started almost a decade ago, 8 years. So what has changed in the social media marketing landscape since then?
Oh, I mean, so much, so hard to answer that because it's like what hasn't changed. It's like that would probably be the easier answer. But when I was reflecting about when we started, is we were one of, if not the first brand to engage and really like use social media to our advantage. Before influencer gifting was a thing, we were giving it to everybody. Before kind of, having like a strong brand identity, like I don't feel like the word brand was even considered really. It was like, you have a shoot and then you market it or something like that. I don't really know how it worked, but Parents Sunny's became very identifiable with what is a brand and the value of a brand. And we were able to do that via social media. Social media back in the day, even ours, was so organic. It was so fun. There was nothing like, we weren't looking at the ROI of posts because who cared? Like we were just doing fun things. We wanted to make fun things, talk about fun things, and do fun things. So I think a lot of it has become very formulaic. It's become very noisy. It's very hard to win that customer now. I think that it has changed so much that it's more like we're trying to figure out what's next, like what are we outside of that platform, what are we outside of Instagram, and how do we stay relevant when, for example, social media changes and moves to a different platform. How do we present ourselves on that? How do we stand the test of time? I think these are the types of questions that we're answering now, because the landscape is so different and so competitive. Social media is like a given now, whereas for us in the beginning it was just like, let's have fun with it and let's talk to people with it. So yeah, I think I can totally see how it can get really overwhelming and consuming, but I always just go back to the basics with social media. Remember when it was fun?
Well, George, I think that would be the culmination of everything we've discussed. Obviously, it will be down to the brand and the product, right? You've delivered a masterclass in social media marketing, and I am so thrilled to have this conversation with you. So, before we wrap up, I would just like to ask if there's any parting words that you would have for our fame community. Because obviously they're a group of entrepreneurs who are all building their brands and navigating this really complicated world of social media.
Yeah.
Please, if you have some
Well,
inspirational words for them.
I have been thinking about this because I want to make sure that, it is so daunting and challenging these days to be an entrepreneur. It's hugely competitive and we're competing with the world. We're not just competing with, our next door neighbor anymore. That's what globalization has brought. But with that comes so many opportunities and so many things. And I feel that the Philippines we have so much to say. And now it's like we have the playing field. We're now being considered. And I think that it's time to really take that opportunity and just go for it. Like really, really, entrepreneurs are the backbone of any economy. And I feel that encouraging them, inspiring them is something I really believe in. And I feel like I've said a lot, and I want to make sure that it's not like, oh my God, where do I start? So I kind of made a summary on what I think is important. And it starts with one, defining who you are and what you stand for. Start there. You don't need to go far, and you can have a trusted friend listen to you and just talk about it. Why do you want to start this brand, or why do you want to continue doing this brand? And why do you think it's important? So define who you are and what you stand for. Number two, communicate who you are and what you stand for. And that's where social media comes in, right? Like you have to be able to, once you know deep down inside, this is who I am as a brand, then communicate it and communicate it well. It's visual and it's vocal. It's the tone and the visuals. And I never see those things as, apart. They go hand in hand. And be really clear about your brand message. That's number three. I think people get lost in this world of social media because they almost get like swayed by everything that you see. So sometimes I actually tell our brand teams to wear like horse blinkers sometimes, especially when we're coming up with stuff, because it doesn't help to be so distracted by all the noise. Like go in on who you are and what you want people to know, and take the time to build that and then communicate that clearly. And for, I guess the most, where I'd like to leave this is invest and care for your brand. It's never ending. You're never gonna be like, I've spent enough on marketing, or I've spent enough on communication, I've spent enough on my images. It doesn't work that way. It's like, would you stop feeding your child? It's the same thing. If you want your business to stay alive and be competitive and be a brand that exists for a long time, you invest in it and you care for it. You don't do things that, diminish its value, and you do things that, will make it grow and stay around for a long time. And yeah, I hope, and that's why I love what you guys are doing, because I think we need that. We Filipinos need that push to own the world. Like we can do it. We just need that platform to be able to do so.
Thank you to our guest, Georgina Wilson. It's been a pleasure having you join us here on Fame Plus Market Days. Today, Georgina Wilson gave us a lot of helpful tips on how to navigate the sometimes complex, and confusing but essential world of social media marketing. We learned that in starting your own social media marketing, clarity of vision is most important. You have to be clear on what you want to be known for and keep talking about it. But talk about it properly by implementing strategies. Strategy is everything. You need to put in the time and energy to research about your market and how you can successfully connect with them. This will allow you to fully maximize your social media channels. Your brand voice is the soul of your brand. It's how your audience will hear you. So make sure it's the language you use to communicate to your market and share your values. When planning your content, reiterate your core message. Create an experience for your audience too, and take them on a journey that feels really exciting. Make people feel better for it from a mental and visual standpoint. It all boils down to engaging your market, talking to them, and talking to them like friends. Go beyond the idea of creating content and aim to truly resonate with your audience. When building your social media audience, you need to be very involved in how your customers experience your brand. Make sure they know you're listening to them. Their experience will define their engagement, and you must always aim for engagement. The best thing to get from your engagement that you cultivate through social media is customer loyalty. It's hard to quantify in terms of sales. So look at it as a long term investment into that customer relationship. Always remember that social media equates to customer relationships before, during, and after the sales. When evaluating your content, use the built in analytics of the platform. Perform quarterly and monthly reviews, do trials, and use the analytics to gather data from them. You have to constantly inform yourself to create better content in the future. And lastly, don't forget to have fun. Do fun things, talk about fun things. Don't think of social media as a tool for viral content or peso signs. Think of it as a tool for engaging with the people that matter the most to your brand and cultivating relationships with them. And in the long run, these relationships will help build your brand. This is our last session today for Fame Plus Market Dates. But in case you missed some of our topics or want to revisit them, you can watch the replays of all our stage and session talks by clicking on the replay button. I also invite you to check out the sessions scheduled for tomorrow and to visit our exhibitors at the virtual expo. Once again, I want to thank our guest, Georgina Wilson, and I'd like to thank you for keeping us company. I hope it was an afternoon well spent for you guys.